Burnley lost 1-0 at Sunderland on Saturday, but it wasn't just the disappointing result and performance that has caused consternation amongst Clarets fans. Missing from the team lineup at the Stadium Light was defender Dar O'Shea, who a few hours after the game was sold to Ipswich Town for the relatively bargain price of £12 million. Also not named in the squad was winger Manuel Benson, with manager Scott Parker confirming his absence was due to a possible impending transfer. Josh Cullen and Luca Coglioscio were missing with injuries, although there are reports from the West Midlands press of interest in Coglioscio from Wolverhampton Wanderers. With these absences, added to about a dozen others who have already left, Burnley's bench featured 2 goalkeepers and 3 academy players. The game ended with reserve centre-back Luke McNally making a cameo appearance in attack. There were despondent interviews post-game from the manager, skipper Josh Brownhill, and French defender Maxime Esteve, all of whom mentioned the impact the departures and impending departures were having on the dressing room. After 2 great wins to start the season, the heart appears to have been ripped out of this Burnley team. And who knows what the lineup or the squad will look like when we take on Wolves on Wednesday in the Carabao Cup and then our biggest rivals on Saturday. It looks like a mess. It feels like a mess. But is it really such a mess? We'll discuss all that and more on this episode of From the Be-All End. So full pod squad here to go through everything that's gone on over the last 48, 72 hours. The Sunderland performance is not something that I think we're going to spend a great deal of time analysing. It's more everything that's gone on around that game. With me is Andrew Greaves, Justin Connolly, Chris Bowden and Paul Woodhouse. Greavesy, let's start off with you. People are not happy. Social media is full of people. People are raging about the ownership. They're raging about the situation. Some people are sticking up for the ownership. What do you make of it all?
Yeah, it's all a bit weird. Like you said, we're probably not going to speak very much of the Sunderland performance, which can be best described as a bit meh, I think. Neither here nor there. I think the rest of what you said there is a lot of anger being directed at the ownership. Now, I'm presuming not all of those people are angry just because he didn't give Chris Bowden an interview, which appears to be the only reason that we were angry at ALK back in the day and got a lot of criticism for. My big thing is that now we shouldn't be shocked that when we've given a box of matches to an arsonist, he's gone and set fire to the fucking place. You know what I mean? I think it's one of those things where everybody's warned that this is what's going to happen. Venture capitalists are going to venture capital. Bankers are going to bank. You know, that's what we're doing. We're shipping out people because this is the project. This is the plan. And then today, of course, Sunday as we're recording this, our old friend Bobby Ball, fresh new pair of braces for the comedian, is coming out going, calm down, trust the process. Judges later. Alan loves the club. Alan loves the club. He's across every detail. He's doing one of his very, very frequent Rishi Sunak impressions where he just goes silent. Listen, I'm not a doomsday. I keep saying to people, let's see what we're looking at after Friday. I don't think the transfer situation is going to be as bad, but I can well understand the anger being directed at the board. Let's be honest, Scott Parker looked pretty miffed yesterday, didn't he? Scott Parker looked really pissed off in his post-match press conference.
Oh, he did. So did Maxime Esteve and so did Josh Brownhill. They both looked, especially Esteve. I mean, he looked absolutely gutted. I mean, I don't know what could be going through his head, having just signed a 3 or 4 year contract with the club a few weeks back after his loan deal ended. Woody, your thoughts and feelings about yesterday and everything that transpired?
Well, just following on from those 3 interviews, they all looked like they'd been sold a false bill of goods, didn't they? You know, and it's irrespective of the details of what's gone on, and everybody's heard the same kind of rumours, etc. It's the timing. irrespective of whether there are financial issues and we need to get some money in. If that was the case, that was the case before the start of the season. That was something that could be managed infinitely better than suddenly getting rid of everybody the week prior to the end of the transfer window. This is just gross mismanagement in any which way, shape or form. And so there has to be questions asked about how has it got to this particular stage. And maybe if we look back on everything, this thing about talking about trusting processes, etc., the process is not endless relegations, promotions, getting a new guy in, getting rid of half your squad, and then rebuilding again. That isn't how football works. That's going to catch up with you at some point. And if they fuck it up this week, it's going to catch up with us this year quite easily. But I do honestly believe that this squad, once it sorts itself out and we get some signings in, will obviously compete for promotion. But the point is, shooting ourselves in the foot like this by basically pushing ourselves back by another 6 weeks. It's basically this, starting a pre-season again, having to get a new squad, which is fucking ridiculous. It really is. And that's unforgivable. And I think that's what a lot of people are pissed off about. You don't start off like we've just started off and then decide to throw this kind of a spanner in the works just for shits and giggles. So, but truth will out at some point, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think is actually going on, Chris? Because I'm trying to work out here if there is any process or strategy, or whether this is just chaos. Have players been told you can all go? We'll take offers. Have the agents been told by Pace, you go and get a deal, and it's a good deal for the club. We'll not stand in the players' way. I just don't know. Is it that? Is it a mixture of things? What do you think is actually going on? Because it's pretty. We've never seen anything like this, where suddenly player after player after player like this.
No, I mean it's a mixture, really. But we're Burnley Football Club. I mean, every player has his price. I think you can pretty much say that for most football clubs across.
And always have done.
Exactly. But it comes a point, you look back at sort of recent history, and we got a fabulous offer for Michael Keane, and he left on great terms, and we had a replacement in the building in James Tarkovsky. Great offer for Andre Gray. Happy to shift him on. Offers coming for Tarky. We were able to knock those back. But it comes a point where you've got to be sort of, you meet our valuation. I think O'Shea, when you look at Ipswich have signed the lad Greaves from Hull for 18 million quid. Now, Dar O'Shea, he's early to mid-20s, Premier League experience with 2 clubs, international footballer on a regular basis, 12 million, rising to 15, we're led to believe. I think that's, even though it's a profit, I don't think that's, is true valuation. They got good money for Odebear, but it's not that necessarily the players that have left the building. If you look, Berger, like I say, you win the first 2 games without Berger. You get good money for Berger. He's a great player. We'll miss him, but we've got good players in the building there. Muric goes, you replace him with a promotion-winning goalkeeper. Worrell and Humphreys are in the building, for O'Shea. But when you start, you lose Odebear and you're thinking, oh, great, Zarori comes in. Oh, no, we've got rid of Zarori. Oh, great, Benson comes in. We've got rid of Ben. Well, we're getting rid of Benson by the looks of things. Johan's one of those. It's just a freak one, isn't it? He's got a fabulous offer that he can't refuse for his, for the good of his family future, etc. They've replaced Charlie Taylor. Bastian barely kicked a ball, etc. Peacock Farrell leaves the club. Vigouroux, they bring in another goalkeeper, Etienne Green, and so on and so forth. But to be in a scenario where last Saturday, where we're 3-4 goals to the good, and we bring on a player who played against England in the Euro semi-final, and we bring in a player who scored his penalty against England in the quarter-final, and then this week we bring on a centre-half who we don't even bloody want. It's absolute lunacy. But we're in a situation here where we've got if you look at the guys who are injured or missing, Alderkirk supposedly on his way out, but he's still a Burnley player. Bayer and Ekdal, Lord alone knows what's the problem with them. We've not seen them for donkeys, have we? Delquois, is he still around? No idea. Cullum, he's a lieutenant of company, but it was left out by him for a long spell last year. Is it just a knock? Is there interest in him? Ramsey and Redmond we expect to come back and have an impact. Trésor, he's bloody Scarlet Pimpernel, isn't he? Adji, but you've got it. It's all well and good saying we've got these lads to come back. They're not available now. And some of them we can't, we don't know if we can depend on them. Can we depend on Trésor? I've no idea. Adji, he's played 8 games in his senior career. That's it. You don't let players go until we've either got players in the building or we've got lads fit again. You say, okay, yeah, I appreciate there's interest there, but no, they're not. I'm sorry, you're not going anywhere until we get a replacement. And unless there's a handful, I think we've spent about roughly half of the money that we've brought in so far, which is fine. It's the same as 2 years ago, but there needs to be, in key positions, significant strengthening. And already, never bollocks to the Wolves game. We should be able to bloody, just give Wolves a bye. I couldn't give a flying one against that game, but we're going into a game against a Blackburn team who will be licking their lips. That they look a united bunch. They're hard to beat. They've not lost a game so far under a manager who makes his teams hard to beat. They've not beaten Burnley for over 14 years. And they'll be looking at us and thinking, well, they're an absolute rabble, this lot. And the leadership that went through the core of the team that would have gone round that dressing room 2 years ago and says, we bloody win this game today. Your Taylors, your Brownhills, your Corks, your J-Rods, Barnes, all that. We've basically got J-Rod and Josh Brownhill. And I tell you what, I'll take a point now against that lot, which is absolutely shameful given the situation that we've been in.
I'm not sure we're going that far, are we? But
yeah.
Not yet.
Justin, I mean, we've been constantly hearing about processes and models and strategies, and this idea presented that this is like something that there's a revolutionary plan here about which player trading is at the heart of. Is this what it looks like, or is this chaos?
Well, it strikes me that it's more along the lines of the chaos idea. I can't believe that this is the plan. I mean, we were all obviously down at the end of the season, but I think we all felt deep in our hearts that the squad, the team at least, had improved over the second half of last season, and we were all quietly sort of hopeful that if we could keep that squad together as best as we could. We had some real talent in there. Obviously, we expected to lose some of them. I think the ones that have gone early on, the likes of Berger and the likes of Odebear, they're the sort of players that you would have expected to have moved on because, they were maybe a little bit of a higher level. But you don't let them all go. You don't let them all walk out the door. And I just find it incredible that people are trying to argue that this has been the plan all along. I mean, we're like we've all said we played those 2 games and won them both at a canter with a squad that we were all really excited to see develop over the course of this season. And then, fingers crossed, if we did manage to compete and get up, we'd keep that squad together and and maybe do a little bit better in the Premier League than we did last time around. As has been said by others, we've completely shot ourselves in the foot and made that eventuality now an impossibility. That squad has been, ripped apart, and now we're 2 weeks into the season and we're having to build a squad in a week. I mean, it's an enormous gamble, isn't it? When you think about it, it's like, what are the chances of this ownership, this board, this chairman have managed to managing to pull off the half a dozen or so transfers that we're going to need in the next 5 days to build a squad that's capable of getting promoted out of this division. I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm not saying they can't do it. It could happen, but it seems like a massive gamble, doesn't it? It seems like the chances of them being able to pull that off, given what's happened in the past, when we already had a squad in place that I think would have been, really, really, competitive this season and really able to go
favourites to win the
forward.
league. Favourites to win the league.
Absolutely, and and also, to go from, it seems like years ago that we were talking about them in Spain, looking like a weight had been lifted off their shoulders, and they were all having a great time out in Spain, and the squad seemed really upbeat and really cheerful, and Scott Parker seemed to have come in and changed the tone of everything. To go from that in the space of a couple of weeks to where we are now, where the manager in his interview after the Sunderland game looked like he was ready to walk. He looked like not just walk, but maybe do himself in. He was so. Like you say, he's been sold a pup, hasn't he? Obviously, what's happened this week isn't what he signed up for. You can see that from his body language, and there was no hiding the fact. There was no coded messages in those conversations that Brownhill and Scott Parker were having. They were both absolutely gutted about what's happened this week. And, it's going to take a miracle to turn it around. And, who's confident that these people are capable of pulling off the miracle that's required? I'm not sure I am.
I mean, Parker must have been told that squad was going to be cut down to size, right? I mean, it was nearly 40 odd, wasn't it? It was a huge size at the end of last season. He must have been told there'd be players going out, but it's the way that players have been going out and which players have been going out. It's not been trimming the fat, has it? Or it's not been just picking one or two who are going to make a lot of money, like the Odeberg and Berger say. It's just this random way. And the other thing that concerns me, and Greavesy, I'm interested in what you think about this, because you talked a lot about last season about how we would be a better team as a result of everything that the team was going through last year, no? That the collective, they were learning, they were getting better, they were dealing with it, they had all this adversity, and it would stand us in good stead this year for when we come back, and then the year after that back in the Premier League. But does that actually still stand? And I don't disagree with what you were saying at that time, but now looking at it, there is no team, there is no collective memory anymore, is there? If you completely, every season, scrap what had happened before and start anew.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as Justin said, it's the, do you have trust that they'll be able to keep repeating this process? I mean, they clearly have this untold confidence that it's all in the data. You just buy the players. It's this money ball. It's this, almost Wall Street trading type. You run the algorithm. You find the players. You sell the players. You repeat. At some point, that ain't going to work. And the more it goes on and the less it works, like that first season, there weren't many duff players, were there? There were players who perhaps didn't get a lot of time. But, Egan Riley, for instance, I thought he was probably a rare shining light on Saturday at Sunderland. So clearly there's a good player there.
Did
McNally clearly developed as a good, centre-half in the Championship at both Stoke City and Coventry City. So we have picked up good players. We might not have seen the benefit of those players. But you're absolutely right. In terms of, that collective memory, as you said, that kind of, dealing with adversity, etc., what I would say, the kind of a couple of bright sparks, I do think Worrell is an upgrade on O'Shea, and we shouldn't forget that most of us had given O'Shea a piggyback to wherever he wanted to go for most of last season. So I think Worrell is an upgrade in that respect. But like you say, it's the nature of it. A lot of these players I'm not massively surprised they're going. Amdouni, Benson, who's barely had a kick, so he's not really having an impact on the team. I don't think he's got any minutes so far this season. Who else is there? Vegos, we expected to go. So some of them I'm not I'm not that bothered. We've trimmed a bit of fat with Obafemi, Bastian, Cherlinov. Scott Twine. Berger we expect to go, but it's then the next layer, isn't it? Like if Vitinho goes back to Brazil, if Alderkeel goes, if Josh Cullen goes, God forbid, if Koleosho goes, it's them players who you kind of went, well, Cullen's not going to go anywhere because he seems settled, he's a good player, he's what we can build around. Koleosho's not going to go because he didn't really play much last season, so our club's going to take a punt on him, and I still don't think Koleosho will go. Vitinho's not going to go because he loves the place, etc. But when you kind of suddenly agents are going, look, you better jump ship because this ship's sinking, which is, probably the message from a lot of agents who think, fucking hell,
feels like it, doesn't it?
I might get a massive, I get Vitinho back to Brazil, nice little kickback, which I weren't expecting, pays for me, pays for Christmas, etc., etc. The agents have sensed blood and they've kind of gone, right, this place is a shit show. Brownhill to Turkey, for God's sake. Can you imagine? And I'm painting this as the doomsday scenario. We perhaps, wait till Friday to record the podcast, or we do an emergency podcast after the window's shut. Can you imagine? If we've lost Josh Brownhill, Josh Cullen, Koleosho, Vitinho, plus Weghorst and Benson, and maybe even Trafford? Now, we don't know who's coming in, and, the one thing I do trust is I think Scott Parker has probably, the players we're being linked with, let's be honest, gone are the days when we get kids from Belgium. That little flirtation with, nippy wingers and stuff from Belgium and France is probably over. We're probably moving to a kind of Sean Dyche, Vincent Kompany love child where there's a bit of Lee, whatever he's called, Lee Mooney. But there's a few more kind of, the Mickey Johnson or whatever he's called from Celtic feels a bit more like the kind of player Dyche should have gone for. Feels a bit more like a Scott Parker player. Travers, the goalkeeper, bit more Scott Parker type thing. And I wonder whether that's a bit of his influence to say, look, actually, you've dealt me a bit of a bad hand here. I can rescue this, and I've got full faith in Scott Parker, having been dead against him becoming Burnley manager. Got full faith in his ability as a coach and a manager. He needs to get a grip of this week. He can't allow Pace, who we know knows fuck all about football and how to run a football club. How can you not know who Eric Dyer is? How can you not know who Eric Dyer is? For God's sake.
Probably trying to sign him, yeah.
I had a student once who wondered who was the Prime Minister, and I thought it was a trick question. I genuinely, how do you not know who Eric Dyer is? He knows nothing about football. He knows nothing about this community, and he knows nothing about how to run a football club. Keep him away from the transfers. Let Scott Parker do his business this week. All will be fine. Put Dom Pace in the back of a fucking car or down below deck on HMS Piss the League or whatever people like to talk about. And we might get that shit back on safer waters.
Would it? I mean, looking at what's coming in and coming out, do you think we do need to start saying no to people? I mean, is it as simple as that? If we don't know what the contracts are, for example, that Dar O'Shea one feels a little bit like there was something there for a 15 million or 12 million fee for him or something. But it does seem like if someone comes in with an offer, we're just going to sell. We can say no.
Yes, but to your point, exactly there, it depends on the contracts, doesn't it? But it's also, you can imagine that Scott Parker's come in not knowing much, and he's coming relatively late, not knowing much about the squad at all, knowing it's a huge squad. And he mentioned fairly early that he's only really been able to work with the main kind of first team squad, as it were, not the second string set of players. So he doesn't know himself what necessarily is coming through. But you can imagine that he's had to come in, he's had to introduce himself, he's had to at least have those conversations. And anybody who's been in any kind of workplace scenario where suddenly there are rumours about people getting laid off or there may be financial troubles, rumours start to circulate. And you start thinking, well, does this mean we're not going to be able to sign various folk? What's going to go on? But you may buy into what the new guy's got to say. But it seems like there's been a rug pulled. And as soon as you start, and as soon as something like that happens in that kind of a scenario, it doesn't matter what kind of workplace it is, then it's an exodus because you don't trust the leadership. You can't necessarily. It's not that you don't trust your manager. He can be as sound as you want, but it's not him necessarily making the decision. So his word doesn't really mean anything in any of this. And he's left looking like a muppet. Everybody else is just thinking, well, do I stick or twist? And obviously with football, you twist, you get out. And so it's one of those. If it is trying to get rid of as many folks as we can for financial reasons, then I'm going to imagine that pretty much everybody is up for sale within reason. But we've also got to say with one or two, he's got to dig his heels in and he's got to say no, because this will become untenable and it will find, I mean, this discussion next week could be extremely different and a lot worse than what this is now. You know, but you'd like to think that he could say no, and he might have to.
Chris, you're shaking your head there.
Well, I just you look at people like I mean Josh Brownhill. He's not a Burnley lad, but he seems to have got a feeling for the place, and this, you know, his brother plays down the road at Padiham. He's been here for sort of like 4.5 years. Been up, been down, you know, quite clearly enjoys playing for the club. And he wasn't great yesterday, but he could have gone to West Ham when he came to Burnley, but he'd shaken hands with Sean Dyche, and he's a man of principle, and I like that in football because it's rare. You know, West Ham came in, and you can imagine any other footballer on earth, if you've got a choice of going to Burnley or West Ham, you'd go to West Ham, with all due respect. But he said, no. I've given my word to Sean Dyche. I'm joining him. He's got integrity. Now, but even if he wants to stay at Burnley, if the football club then turn round and say, oh, well, yeah, by the way, we're happy for you to go to Turkey for whatever fee. Well, if they're prepared to sell you and they feel, you know, he feels like he's unwanted, you're gonna walk out the club, aren't you? You know, you've got to be showing to certain players that, you know, you're our future now. We want to, you know, we're going to build the team around the likes of you, Esteve, people like that. You're going to be our leaders, our core. You know, Koleosho, you're not going anywhere. You know, like I say, who else is going to get people off the seats now? You're going to that opening game against Luton, and you're terrifying them with the pace of Odebert and Koleosho. To lose both of those, it would be absolutely, just devastating. It's just destabilising. Like I say, we've got. I mean, they're still at the club, but there's at least 10 players linked with moves, and it's not just like random rumours. These appear to be sort of like, you know, concrete interest. You know, Benson, concrete interest. You know, Brownhill, you know, it's emerged in Turkey. I'm doing it. I mean, all this sort of loan to bollocks. You know, if you don't want to play for this football club, and there's no suggestion that, you know, he's not come out publicly and this, that, and the other. But I'm sorry, if a club of Benfica's stature wants Zeki Amdouni, they can bloody well pay for him, because otherwise it serves no purpose to us. It's madness. We've had years of this with Weghorst. And again, if he wants, you know, if Ajax come calling, fair enough, but pay them. Well, you know, they've had since the end of, you know, the middle of bloody May to sort. You know, if you want to get a move, sort yourself a move. You know, but all this, it's these games that go on during the winter transfer window. It's just tiresome, and everything always ends up bloody dragging out to the, you know, right to the bell on deadline day. For Christ's sake, all for the sake of it. You know, playing a few games and eking out a few quid here and there. Let's just, if they want out, just, you know, sod off. We'll get, you know, go out and we'll bring someone in. You know, it infuriates me. Absolutely infuriates me.
Justin, I mean, I was thinking about what you were saying about, you know, the feel of the club and it being Burnley and so on. I was just thinking back to like when you're a kid, or even, you know, like my nephew, how he's been over the last few years with Burnley fans, where one of the things that keeps you a Burnley fan, or that makes a big part of it, is having these heroes, isn't it? You know, I mean, you've talked on this podcast about Leighton James, and you know, we've all got our favourite players from. I'm just wondering if I'm a 10 or 11-year-old kid now, how can you feel attachments to Burnley players when, you know, let's say last year you go, oh, this order brilliant, you know, he's really good, and you buy the shirt and you follow him, and and then he's gone, and then you say, all right, you know, Koleosho's brilliant anyway, so it doesn't matter, you know, I'm going to be a Koleosho. You know? I mean, how
it doesn't work like that, does it? You don't switch your allegiance like that. You don't. You can't. And I don't. You know, if players are going to come in and just spend a year at the club, that sort of identifying with your hero, and I mean, these shirts aren't cheap, for one thing. You know, imagine. I mean, I know they put that little disclaimer, don't they, on the shop? You know, we advise against people getting the names of players on the back of the shirt while the summer transfer window is open. But if you dropped, 60 quid on an Odebear shirt, you're not going to be very happy about it, are you now? But that's it. You know, you can't possibly identify with these players because you don't see them grow to their full potential. You don't see them, you know, mature, and you don't get to enjoy those moments with them. I mean, obviously, there were a handful of good moments last season with Koleosho and with Odebear, but it wasn't like, you know, the impact that someone like Trevor Steven had back in the day, was it? You know, or those kind of players who were there for a considerable length of time, and you could sort of get into it. I mean, when Trevor Steven went to Everton, didn't he?
Yeah,
and I got an Everton shirt that Christmas because I wanted to follow him. You know, I wanted to, you know, be part of his future. You know, you can't. You know, there's not going to be any Burnley fans getting Spurs shirts with Odebear's name on the back because we've all forgotten about him already. You know, how many games did he play for us? Not that many. It's just
we barely knew you.
We barely knew you, and there you were, and then you went. I mean, it's silly money for him, and you know that I don't blame them for accepting that. I mean, if the rumours on that are correct, but yeah, I don't know. I don't believe that this is the process. I don't believe that this is the way that they planned this summer window to go. I mean, obviously we can't speculate about any of this, but something's happened to alter the mood at the club. Something has happened. A switch appears to have been flicked somewhere in the last 7 days, where that happy camp that we saw in Spain, or you know, a month ago, has turned into this toxic situation where all these players just want to get out. And you know, I can understand why. I mean, the momentum grows, doesn't it? It's like the ship starts to sink and everybody starts deserting. And I can understand why the players start thinking, oh, you know what, this might be my only opportunity to get this move now, because things are so destabilized, things are so chaotic that I'm not 100% convinced that, you know, we're going to do well next season. And then where does my career end up? I might as well cash in now. So it's something's changed, something's switched. Obviously, like I say, we can't talk about, we can't speculate about what that might be because we've not got an inside information on what's going on in the club. But it feels chaotic, and it doesn't feel like this is the plan. I mean, I'm not one for harking back to the Sean Dyche days. I thought some of that football was miserable, but I will agree with Chris in that you manage these situations properly. So, like Chris said, when we sold Michael Keane to Everton, we already had his replacement in the building. You know, when we sold Andre Gray, you know, he made noises about wanting to leave, and Dyche was like, "Okay, see ya." We already had a replacement in the building. That's management. That's making sure that you are protected. What management skills are the current owners showing that gives me confidence that all these players that are walking out the door now, we're going to get somebody in who's at least as good as them or better. I haven't got any confidence in that. That's not managing the situation. That's just seems to be just rolling the dice and seeing where it lands. And that's no way to manage a football club.
Greavesy, something has gone on, Justin was saying there, and other people have said the same thing over the last few hours. We've heard rumours about various things that I find hard to believe have totally affected the team. But the reaction of those players in those interviews, their body language, the way they were talking, they weren't saying, yeah, it's part and parcel of the game that players come and go in the transfer week. We've heard that. You hear that all the time in football because, players, Sunderland lost Jack Clark last week. And I'm sure if you asked a Sunderland player, they'd say, yeah, it's unfortunate, part of the game, blah, blah, blah. They weren't. They were like, every day it's something else. I think it was it Josh Brownhill said that? Every day it's something else. Esteve is talking about, it's just going on and on. I mean, something has happened there, and it's hard to put our finger on it, as Justin suggests. But go on, try.
I knew you'd throw me that absolute stinger of a curveball, 65 mile an hour straight in me nuts. Like, yeah, thanks for that. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, right? We know for a fact that the head of the academy manager, has left his post at Turf Moor, right? So there's rumours all over Twitter about a WhatsApp message. I have just seen something from somebody who I trust to say he left a week last Friday, so he's been out of the building for over a week, and it is to do with a WhatsApp message, right? So that's the thing. Apparently so, right?
Right.
You'll have to go on Twitter to look at what the WhatsApp message is, because we've not sold enough T-shirts to pay for
the lawyers.
But we have. It has been confirmed that he has left the football club, right? So there is something destabilising apparently about whatever it is. I presume, people will make their own mind up about that. And again, I don't know. I'm not 100% certain that, what's being reported on Twitter is exactly right, and there's a lot of embellishments. But them interviews were really telling. It was that real kind of, like Justin said, something's just flicked. We were told, we weren't told, but, I think Matt Williams went to a London Clarets meeting, and it was reported there that there's no issue from a cash flow situation this year. Basically, as long as we get promoted, we'll be fine. There's nothing on Company's House, I don't think, to suggest that there's any money due beyond what we've already promised in terms of future TV money. And I was talking to someone this morning and said, well, even if that was the case, there's no way that Pace is using the transfer fees incoming to pay down the debt, because football clubs will carry debt, and not all debt is bad as long as you can service it. Seems to be the kind of, football chairman way of thinking about it, whether it's Pace or whoever. But there is I was shocked at Esteve's interview, really shocked, because, he is somebody, I think I've said on the podcast before, I've been mega impressed with that lad in terms of, his buy-in to what's happening here. He feels like he really gets it, so you're talking about heroes. He's a young lad, and you kind of think to yourself, you know what? He's not resigned himself into a year in the Championship. He sees it as a learning curve. And actually, if he has a promotion under his belt, even better as champions, he'll be a better player for being in the Championship and helping a side that he cares about get into the top flight. And then you've got Josh Brownhill, who, as Chris said, honest as the day's long. We've been critical. I've been critical of him at Premier League level. Bloody good football at Championship level. One thing you would never criticise Josh Brownhill for is his lack of honesty and lack of integrity. And he said a really telling thing. Lads don't know whether, people don't know whether they're going or not. And that kind of harked back to the conversation he was having with Charlie Taylor in Mission to Burnley at this time last year, when they met up in a cafe and basically went, it is difficult, because Taylor was like, I don't know whether I'm going or not. And I think Brownhill was in a similar situation last summer. There's just a real weariness to their answers, and Parker again, in a way, I think, we know he'll have known the situation, but I think things have snowballed so quickly this week that he's lost I'm going to say he's lost a grip on the situation. That's not a criticism of him. The situation has engulfed him, is what I mean to say.
He can't control it, can he? He can't control it.
No, he can't control it. And managers like to control the controllables. It's what Alex Ferguson used to say. Control the controllables. Everything else, you just have to hope takes care of itself. So something's clearly happened. For him to come out and say, yeah, Dar Roche's leaving, that's fine. If he was down in Ipswich having his medical sign his contract, fine, not a problem. And then to kind of come out and say, well, look, when asked about Weghorst and Benson, it's not where their mind is. So I thought it was best not to have him in the team. So that's, he's done the best for the team there as Parker, but it will have a destabilising effect on the group, etc., etc. And then I don't know whether putting McNally on up front is a message to the board. I actually, like I said, I don't think it's as big a mess from a transfer point of view.
Well, just let me pick you up on that one because, me and Woody had this conversation about whether sending McNally on up front was a message to Pace, and the conclusion was Pace wouldn't have a clue what the message was, would he? He'd be like, "Oh wow, a defender could play an attack too. Great, 2 for 1."
Yeah. I think he's banging Bobby Bowles' drum on Saturday against Rovers.
Special teams.
That's his next one. But I actually think that the biggest area we've got a problem in is up front.
Yeah,
there is no way on earth we are getting through a championship season of being successful with Jay and Lyle Foster up front. I'm sorry. I love Jay to bits, but he's not being used as a central striker. Has been pretty much ineffective last 2 games. Aside from a bit of the build-up for one of the goals, obviously. 2 of the goals, maybe. I might be being a little bit harsh on him against Cardiff. And Foster really, has shown promise, but hasn't really clicked on. So, for me, I don't think we're actually lacking that many bodies. We definitely need, if we don't lose Koleosho and we don't lose Vitinho, you can probably scrape by, but another winger would be quite nice. Across defence, I think we're all right. In the goalkeeping department, if you lose Trafford, then you've got the lad from Ipswich whose name I still can't pronounce. You've got Etienne Green. And I'd like to see Charlie Casper, as we've said on last week's pod, I think it was, become third choice rather than go out and get another journeyman goalkeeper, another keeper to become third choice. That serves no purpose whatsoever. Notice Vigouroux's a regular starter for Swansea, I think, this season already. So, I don't think that's fair on another kind of experienced goalkeeper. What I do want, if I had my wish list, it'd be one extra winger and a striker. Now there has been some talk of Leicester City being willing to let Tom Cannon go. Now I think if we get Tommy Cannon and we've already got Bobby Ball, HMS Pistol League, anchor up, let's do it, beat bastards, we're on it, let's end on it's a positive. Rock on. Get the tweet ready, Don Pace, HMS Pistol League, let's do it, let's get the clicks, let's get the likes, we're in. You lot are all too negative for this. Ball. There we go. So that's my view. It's not all doom and gloom. If we get Tommy Cannon, the season is made. The season is made if we get Tommy Cannon and we get Bobby to introduce him with some braces on. I'd be happy. Let's keep it positive, In all seriousness, we don't know what's going to happen between now and Friday. I've been fending off WhatsApp messages and text messages from people I presume are stood on the top of buildings or, Beachy Head or whatever. And I am, literally just saying, we don't know what's going to happen. If we get a good number of incomings, and I expect somewhere between 4 and 6 incomings this week, really, because I think that's the hard work that's going in from Parker and from Matt Williams and everybody else. And then we beat Rovers, which I still think, I'm not taking a draw, Chris. I'm beating Rovers. We could sit here next Sunday and go, well, that were all a bit of a storm in a teacup. I might be being too optimistic, but
it could happen. That could definitely happen.
See how this week pans out. We're losing players we expected to lose by and large. If we don't lose Koleosho, we don't lose Vitinho, don't lose Cullen.
But
I don't think we've lost anybody we expected to leave.
Go on, Chris.
Where's the creativity? I mean, this is all well and good if Redmond and Ramsey and these players are on the precipice of returning, brilliant. Because I think those two will be absolutely, I think they'll be first team regulars. I think they'll be terrific at this level. But how much can we rely on those after sort of long-term injuries, etc.? But we need craft. Like I say, it's like Justin was saying in the group chat, we've gone to Sunderland yesterday, and for as poor as we were, Trafford's not been like making save after save. They've defended quite well. Sunderland could have won by a bigger margin, but by and large we've defended all right. But they wouldn't have scored if they were still playing now.
No,
and, I love Coutinho for bits, but he's creatively he's not fabulous creatively. Utonji, I mean, we've got to give him time to sort of get into the swing of things at this level. But I say you take Odegaard, Benson, Zarori out of the equation. If you lose an Amdouni, you're taking the whole creative spark out of the team altogether. And it's
before we wrap up,
if you bring in a Hannibal, Hannibal's not going to bring you that.
Before we wrap up, we do have to discuss Bobby Ball's intervention today, though. I think with the fans getting very, very worked up on Twitter and very, very agitated about many of the things we've discussed here, presumably. Bobby Ball came riding in to urge people to calm down. Felt a bit like a Harry Enfield sketch with the calm down part of it. But Woody, what did you make of that from a PR strategy point of view from Russell Ball?
Wasn't the brightest, was it? It just smacked of, there was a certain arrogance to it. I mean, it was great as a lightning rod. If you suddenly wanted everybody to attack one person, the morning after the day before, he did a fucking great job with regards to that. But it's like, calm down, trust the process. Little Al's, immersed fully with every aspect of the club, to which, could have been taken as not necessarily a backhanded compliment, because maybe that's the problem. Maybe he shouldn't be immersed in absolutely every single aspect of the club, and maybe hire one or two people who do know certain other aspects of the club. But it didn't come out shining. Let's put it that way.
No, it was a strange decision from the head of fan engagement. Yeah, head of fan engagement. Yeah, well, he seems certainly engaging with fans.
Director.
Sorry, director.
Yeah, not just head of. He's a director. Yeah. He's much higher than you.
Not vice president of fan engagement. No. Right, shall we call that a wrap? I think we've gone over plenty there today, and. We've got Wolves on Wednesday in the Carabao Cup. The idea of rotating our squad for that one seems a little bit redundant. And then, of course, we will be back before the big one. Well, we might even be back before the big one, because we've got the end of the transfer window as well. We'll see what happens with all that. There's going to be a lot to discuss this week. So make sure you subscribe to everything that we put out there so you don't miss anything if we do any emergency pods after we bring in those 5 or 6 players that we've demanded today. All the best. Have a great week, and up the Clarets.